Hi, KCD Lahore. Thank you so much for welcoming me here today. It's such an honor to form part of your community and to have the opportunity to participate in this beautiful and inclusive community event. Congratulations to all of the organizers, to the community as well, for creating such a wonderful place for people to learn, connect, and share. These events are so momentous and so fantastic to participate in, and it's just an absolute pleasure to be here. Also, many thanks to those of you who are joining my session today. It's titled Taking on the Challenges of Testing in the Modern CI/CD Pipeline. We're going to look at some different strategies and things that we can do to try to have better deployments. So 1 second, let me see if I can get my screen sharing going. There we go. So before we begin, let me introduce myself. My name is Courtney Nickerson. I am a mother, and in my free time, when my kids are either at school or sleeping, I'm a developer advocate for KubeShop, where we build some very cool and hopefully some very useful open source projects focused on solving problems of Kubernetes users. In addition to helping KubeShop community, I also spend some time helping to organize the CNCF Bilbao community meetup group, Kubernetes Community Days Spain, and this year I had the opportunity to help organize KCD Islamabad, along with a group of other fantastic people, including my friend Saeem Safdar. Saeem, if you're there, hi, hope you're doing well. I also try to participate and support as many other cloud native community events as possible and as time permits. Outside of CNCF groups, I'm also an ambassador for CVO. CVO is a very cool movement and tool. If you've never used it and haven't had the opportunity, that's for another talk, but feel free to reach out to me for information. And I'm also a member of a newly formed DASA DevOps platform engineering expert panel. So I know there's a lot of movement around platform engineering within the CNCF, but there's a lot of movement around platform engineering in other spaces as well. So if you're interested in that topic, so am I. It'd be great to connect. You're welcome to connect with me on X, the random space formerly known as Twitter. My handle there is Tech Talking Mom, or on LinkedIn, just under Courtney Nickerson. There are a couple of us, but this is my face, so you should be able to find me. And if I'm not sharing my face, which I'm suddenly thinking that maybe I'm not, I did at the beginning, so make sure to check me out. I'm also on CNCF Slack, Kubernetes Slack, and loads of other community-oriented channels. So if you see me around, please say hi. Today, we're going to explore the intricate world of testing and modern CI/CD pipelines. With the shift toward continuous integration and continuous deployment, testing has become not just a necessity, but a critical challenge for teams of all shapes and sizes to try to sort out. So studies show that 70% of DevOps professionals consider testing to be the biggest bottleneck in their CI/CD process. That's a pretty big amount of people who seem to be struggling with this. And so today, our goal is to identify the challenges faced in creating a practice of continuous testing, discuss effective strategies to overcome them, and introduce you to open source tools like TestCube that can help streamline and enhance your testing processes. So let's get started. To start off, let's start by making sure that we all understand what CI/CD pipeline means. I'm sure most of you do, but since these fantastic events allow beginners, and we just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So CI, or continuous integration, it's the practice of regularly merging code changes into a shared repository. We oftentimes do this multiple times a day, and each merge triggers automated builds and tests to ensure that code integrates smoothly. And then CD, continuous deployment, that takes everything a step further by automatically deploying code changes to production, often without much human intervention. A key element of these pipelines, however, is automating tests, which is what our focus is on today. The need for testing is quite large, right? Testing in CI/CD pipelines is crucial because it helps you ensure software quality and successful deployments. This is something that's important and pressing in rapidly evolving environments. Modern CI/CD pipelines demand rigorous testing to maintain reliability, consistency in software releases, and a lot of times they need really strategic approaches to make them work well. Testing encompasses different layers, like unit testing, integration, end-to-end. They all validate different functionalities and the performance of your applications throughout the pipeline. These are all things that become more and more important as we're deploying at scale. And then utilizing automated testing tools and practices becomes essential to making sure that testing pipeline or streamline is as seamless as possible. So just a quick fact here, according to the State of DevOps report, teams that automate testing as part of their CI/CD pipelines are actually 24 times more likely to achieve higher software delivery performance. That's a big number, 24 times. So even though we know that automating your tests is important, it still continues to be kind of a sticky point for people and is really challenging. So why is testing in CI/CD pipeline so difficult? Well, there's a lot of reasons. While CI/CD pipelines are designed to accelerate software delivery, they also introduce some testing challenges, right? One of the most pressing issues is the need for rapid feedback, shorter feedback loops. As release cycles shorten, the pressure to identify and fix bugs quickly drastically increases. And we see this all the time, right? Time to market and roll it out as quickly as possible. And that becomes really difficult to do when you're trying to test at scale. This is particularly challenging in environments where applications are built using microservices and cloud native architectures. And in these cases, the interindependencies become between services, can be super complex, making it very difficult to test effectively. Also, comprehensive testing is required not only for the application itself, but also for load, for performance, for the underlying infrastructure. So there's a lot of different components that are going on there that we need to be able to test efficiently. And that's not always easy to do at scale. Another interesting fact here, some data points just to ponder as we continue. A 2023 survey released that 56% of DevOps teams struggle to adequately test their microservices. They cite the complexity and the time constraints as the primary reasons, and the results are often a trade-off between speed and quality. And obviously that doesn't scale very well. So why is testing in a CI/CD pipeline so challenging? What are some of those challenges? Well, there's quite a few of them going on. But one of the things we need to keep in mind is that we all know we should be running tests. We should probably be running way more tests than what we are. When we build it, we should be running tests, right? We also know, however, that test orchestration has never been great. It's never been easy. It's never been fun. This isn't a super saucy, wonderful topic that people get really into. But even when we were working with less dynamic environments, that experience itself still wasn't really good. But research has also shown that pain on orchestrating tests increases 10 times when we're working with multiple microservices. And this pain obviously has an effect on everyone. It doesn't just affect your coders or your testers. It also affects your DevOps team. It affects your SREs. It affects everybody who's actually involved in getting something launched into production from the beginning to the end. So from testers and developers who are left struggling to manage an array of different testing tools, different test workflows, reports for each tool. It makes it really hard to see what the results are of those tests, and even harder to troubleshoot them when a test has failed, and also to schedule new tests, right? DevOps teams are also constantly having to adjust testing environments, maintain secure practices, and while they're trying to integrate all of this into an already complex CI/CD where they're juggling a lot of different things, this oftentimes becomes a big bottleneck for people. So testing can quickly become a nightmare at scale. And so why is this the case? Well, it's because the large majority of testing frameworks and tools simply were not built with Kubernetes and multimodal microservices in mind, right? They were built thinking about testing one specific thing in a less dynamic environment. And at a much smaller scale. And so CI/CD pipelines, which we already defined, were built to scale the integration and the deployment of applications, but they are less than ideal of a solution for actually orchestrating and automating your tests, because that's also not what they were built for. And this means that most teams have made the leap to Kubernetes, and they're left to create their own homegrown test execution machines that look a little bit like this one, right? All over the place. So these types of pieced together testing machines often have too many components to juggle, making them super cumbersome. They're inefficient, and oftentimes they are seen as a nuance that slows down the CI/CD pipeline, which means that a lot of people don't really want to participate in that either, because the experience isn't good. But the reality is, to ship quality code that isn't going to fail, you can only go as fast as your testing pipeline can give you reliable results, right? And actionable results. So while testing is a sticky point for most CI/CD pipelines, it is a necessity that we cannot overlook and that we have to find some solution to. But turns out there are people looking to find solutions to this, not just in your company and other places, but there is a group of folks working on creating an open source project that hopes to make these obstacles and testing mechanisms that we see here a thing of the past. And so that's where we're going to introduce today TestCube. For those of you who might not have heard of TestCube, TestCube is a test orchestration and execution framework that is powered by Kubernetes, which is great. Tests can be added to any Kubernetes cluster using CRDs. So this is a Kubernetes native component. It's compatible with pretty much every testing tool out there. And its main component, which is an agent that deploys to your Kubernetes cluster, is actually free and open source. And it can be all found on the CNCF landscape as well as on GitHub. So how does TestCube go about doing all of this? Well, TestCube is built on Kubernetes, helps define, trigger, scale, analyze, and troubleshoot testing executions from any tool in a much more efficient way. It works with existing testing tools, integrates with your CI/CD systems. It has a GUI and a CLI, and is API-based, making it suitable for all skill levels to build and execute their tests quickly. It offers a unified reporting, so you have a single pane of glass, whether you're running a Cypress test plus a Playwright test plus a K6 test for your load testing, and a handful of infrastructure tests. The truth is, you can run them all in TestCube. You're going to upload them into TestCube. You can run them all, and then you're going to see them all in the same place, which gives you a much deeper understanding of the testing process itself, a much better view for faster troubleshooting, and for analysis about what's going on in that pipeline. And so it helps replace all of those different tools that we saw pieced together in the previous slide, and replace multiple point tools with and homegrown scripts, which is another huge advantage. It gets rid of those and puts everything in one place that's much easier to manage what's going on. We can take a look here kind of at what the workflow is for this. So the test cube workflow looks something kind of like this. Once you've installed the open source agent that you're going to pull from GitHub, you're just going to download that agent. It's going to give you a license key. You're going to go ahead and get it started on your machine, and you are going to need to put that into a Kubernetes cluster. Once that is located in your cluster, that's where your tests are actually going to run, is in your cluster. You can then create a test using either our UI or the CLI to import pre-existing tests and run them, or use any of our pre-existing templates. So we've got an exponential amount. We've got for Playwright, for Cypress, for K6. The list goes on and on. You can click within test cube. You have a template that comes up. You're going to fill out that information that I asked you for, and your test is going to be written. It's going to be a Kubernetes CRD, and you actually have the YAML component, so it's much easier to be able to edit, duplicate, create a new test, run it again. So once you have your test created, you're going to go, you can either run it and trigger it manually, or you can trigger it from your CI/CD pipeline, because test cube will also work with any CI/CD tool that you have. And just like that, you've got an automated testing workflow that adapts to your cloud native needs. Now, normally I would jump at the opportunity to demo this. However, there's so many different components that I'd really like to show you. And today's talk is shorter than most talks that I give. So I'm going to run through a handful of slides very quickly so that you can get an idea of things that you can do with test cube. However, I'm happy to demo this for anyone at any time. There are also some videos on our YouTube channel that show full demos of test cube. So please feel free to reach out. But since we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to go ahead and run through a handful of slides just to give you a good idea of how this open source tool can fit into your CI/CD pipeline to automate your testing. So the first thing we see here is actually define with test workflows. And this is very much a plug and play, click and drag type of situation where you can click on different types of tests and put them into a workflow. We used to have test suites, still available. We have moved on to something called test workflows. And in test workflows, you're going to click on a test. You can then trigger another test afterwards. You can run tests in parallel, which is another very big thing, is be able to parallelize your tests. And so you can kind of see what one of those workflows would look like here. The next thing we're going to have is to trigger those tests. So once you have your workflow set up and you've kind of done a click and play, a click and drag, plug and play, and you have a workflow set up, you're going to trigger those tests. And you can do that with a bunch of different ways. So you can do it by organizing it into your CI/CD pipeline. You can do it through GitHub Actions. You can do it manually in the actual tool by clicking create and run, or just run if this is a test that you've already run before. You can schedule those tests to be run again at a different time through a cron job. What else can you do? I mean, you can trigger them from Jenkins. You can trigger them from Azure DevOps if you're an Azure house. There's so many different ways to trigger tests that are going to incorporate into your CI/CD pipeline much easier than having to do this manual. After you have created your test and you triggered it and it's run, the biggest advantage that you have here is you're going to have a single pane of glass where you can actually see all of the test results and get some reporting. So you're going to be able to see very clearly what tests you've run, when they were run, pass-fail rates for all of those. We've got loads of different dashboards that are available depending on which version of our tool you're using. And so it just makes making informed decisions about your tests or troubleshooting above all a lot easier. Furthermore, we have centralized artifact and log access. Obviously, this is the troubleshooting point. So once you've run your test, you can automatically see the logs of that test in order to be able to troubleshoot. We help define, help you see what might need to be looked at. And so that cuts down the amount of time that you're sitting there trying to go through things. And especially if you're using 5 or 6 different testing tools and you're trying to run those tests more or less at the same time. And imagine 3 of them fail and you have to be in 3 different tools looking at 3 different logs to try to figure out what to do. TestCube cleans that up for you entirely. And once you've run the test, they are all in the same place. Those results are in the same place. You're going to click on each one and be able to look at those logs, export them, do what you need to do in order to troubleshoot that. So a big time saver there. And then also got a lot of global insights around your test results that are interesting for people to look at. DevOps teams, testers, and engineers all seem to love TestCube. There's a lot of different reasons for that. Some of those are, I'm sorry, my light is going crazy over here, but some of the reasons that people like them is because it eliminates a huge amount of work that people have to do. It makes troubleshooting much faster, just like what we were talking about. It integrates into a platform approach because you've got something that's much more available for your developers to be able to test when they're coding, your testers to be able to do a secondary test. Your DevOps team doesn't have anywhere near as many tools that they have to juggle to help people maintain those testing environments. It makes troubleshooting a lot easier for everyone. It is the list of reasons and things that TestCube helps just goes on and on. As I was saying before, we do have some demos online that you can look at if you're interested, or please reach out to me. I would be happy to jump on a call with anyone to give you a quick demo of TestCube or help you get the open source agent and a Kubernetes cluster set up at any point in time so that you can have a look at what TestCube can do for you. You can resource our open source agent either through GitHub. You have the link here on your screen now. It's also on the CNCF landscape, so please feel free to check us out there. We have a community Slack channel. I would love for people to jump into that Slack channel and ask any questions that you might have about this open source tool. Or you can find us at testcube.io for more information and for Learn pages. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope that this information has been helpful to you. Over time, I know that a lot of people have mentioned to me how difficult their testing pipeline actually is, and they found a lot of value in this open source tool. So since we're short on time, I'm going to bid you adieu. I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of this event, and wishing everybody the absolute best as we move into the end of this year. Thanks so much.